Merry Christmas and welcome to Adventures in VFK. This is Fairy Fanatic. And here we have the very last day of opening our Advent calendar. This is the 24th, and also of finishing, and this will also finish up our nativity set. And also we have the very last segment of our story, the ending of our story, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So this is kind of a day of conclusion. Let's go and open up our Advent calendar, and we'll get our last things. So we're looking for day 24, and here it is right up where the star is. So let's open our calendar, and it says you have opened door 24 of your Advent calendar and received the Advent 2016, day 24, Christmas Nativity, Mary and Baby Jesus. Merry Christmas. So this is our final piece of the nativity scene. We have our Mary and our baby Jesus. So there we go. Well, let's go ahead then and finish up our story. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you are at it. But if he had cut the end of his nose off, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded every one with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before and said, "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe?" It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace and taking the old gentleman by both his hands, "how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes," said Scrooge, "that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?" "If you please," said Scrooge, "not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such—" "Don't say anything, please," retorted Scrooge. "Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear he meant to do it. "Thank you," said Scrooge. "I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you." He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro, and patted children on the head and questioned beggars, and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up into the windows, and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon he turned his steps toward his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash and did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "A nice girl, very." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" said Scrooge. "He's in the dining-room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank'ee, he knows me," said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining-room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." He turned it gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array, for these young housekeepers are always nervous on such points, and like to see that everything is right. "Fred," said Scrooge, "dear heart alive, how is niece by marriage started?" Scrooge had forgotten for the moment about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "Why, bless my soul!" cried Fred. "Who's that?" "It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" "Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did every one when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If only he could be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 past. No Bob. He was full 18½ behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir," said Bob. "I am behind my time." "You are?" repeated Scrooge. "Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. "It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir." "Now I'll tell you what, my friend," said Scrooge. "I am not going to stand this sort of thing any longer, and therefore," he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore I am about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling to the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary, and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset, and knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards, and it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one. Well, that's the end of our story, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. That is really a fabulous story. And I have thoroughly enjoyed reading this to you all. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye.